When teaching Microsoft Excel, the function I get asked about the most is VLOOKUP. I think it's time I put this on video. So I've been delivering Microsoft Excel again. I have to admit, it's really good. I kind of missed it, and it's nice to deliver some of the classic Office applications again, especially VBA. And I forgot all about the common questions I get faced every time and things people want to cover, even when it's not on that particular course. And the most common one is the VLOOKUP. So I decided to do a little demo so you can see how it works. But you can't appreciate the lookup functions unless you have need for them. So this video will take you through what life is like without the lookups, then show you how VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP can make the process quicker and easier. I will point out some common limitations and issues with both functions, and then introduce you to XLOOKUP for all the Excel 365 users. So let's take a look. So let's take two scenarios where we would manually do the task that VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP does for us. So here I've got a scenario where I'm a loan shark. Times are hard under lockdown. I've had to start making some money. Loan shark is a nice, reputable professional business with a bunch of heavies. So the way it works is people will come to me, want to borrow some money over a period of time, and then I tell them how much they pay me back with interest. So here I've got an example. They want to borrow £10,000 over a 2-year period, 24 months, and at the moment that would just cost £416.67 per month. But I want interest. I want to get something back out of what I miss out by giving that money away for a period of time. So inside another sheet here, I've got some periods for which they want to borrow the money, and then I've got the interest rate that I'll charge them. Now, obviously, the longer the period, the higher their interest, because the more at risk I am. So there we've got the 24, and that's what they've asked for. So what I would do is I would go into my table, I would look up the 24. As you can see, what I'm doing is I'm looking vertically down this column of periods. Once I found it, I then go across to the second column and bring back the appropriate interest rate. All I've got to do is just go back to that interest rate and type it in, percentage. There we go. That's it. So now I can see that they'll be paying me £440.51, or $440.51 if you like, per month to pay that back. So they're looking at thinking, oh, okay, that's a little bit too much. Can I stretch the loan a bit longer, maybe 3 years? So okay, that's not a problem. Let's get rid of that interest rate. And let's go back to the table. They want it over 36 months. Let's put in 36 months. Let's look vertically down that table. 36 months, there it is. I'm going to go across to the right, and that second column has the interest rate, 5.42. 5.42. You get the idea. The last example here is they thought, okay, I can afford a bit more. I would like to pay a little bit higher, so maybe we can reduce it a bit. What about 30 months? What about 2.5 years payment? So again, put 30 months in there, but I need to go and look at the interest rate. Now this is where it gets interesting. If I go to the interest rate table here, so 12 months, it's too low. 20 months, too low. 36, oh, too high. Now I've got a decision to make. Do I, with my 30 months, take the next nearest lower interest rate, or do I take the nearest higher interest rate? Well, being at the way that this works, I've said, look, you can have this interest rate of 5.4 until you reach 36 months, then it goes up. So I'm going to stick to that, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to charge you at 5.4% interest. So I've gone for the nearest lower offer. Let's put that back in. There he goes. That's how that works, and you can see that I've been able to do that manually, but there is issues with doing that manually. One, it's time consuming. Two, I could easily bring back and type in the wrong value. So it says 5.2. I could easily just put in there 5.4, type it in manually. I'm only human. I might even look up the wrong value. When you got tables like this, where it gets wider and bigger, you can easily just bring back the value on the wrong row. And the other thing is that data I've typed in is static. So if I do want to change that period, I've got to remember that that value has to be manually updated as well, and I've got to go and reflectively go and pick it up. Now, I've been showing that on probably the most common method, and that is the table where I've got the periods going vertically down that column. Sometimes you have tables where the data is got a different orientation. It's been transposed here. So the data now has the periods going horizontally, so I say, across that row, and then the interest rates are underneath it. It's the same information, it's exactly the same structure, except the orientation's changed. And there could be many X reasons why you would have the table in one sort of fashion or another. But as a human being, you just adapt. You just know what you're looking for, and you know which direction you're going, but you don't actually constantly think about it. So that's the human sort of manual way of looking for information, finding it, and then bringing back the relevant sort of returning value. How can VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP make that better? Let's put those values back. And let's make life a little bit easier. What I want to do is put that formula in, but I would like you to see it progress as time goes on. So I'm going to take those tables that were on different sheets, and I'm going to copy that data. I'm going to put it on the same sheet. It's just purely for visual, so it's easier for you to see. So same principle. I want to look for the period. I want to go and grab the returning appropriate value next to it once I've found that period and stick it in there. So I'll use a lookup function. Question is, which one do I use? Do I use VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP? Well, if you followed what I was using in terms of the sort of looking for the period, I was talking about looking vertically down the first column, or I was looking horizontally across the first row. And that's going to determine which lookup function I'm going to use. So in this table, because I was manually looking vertically down that first column, I'm going to replace that with a VLOOKUP. If I was using this to look horizontally across the first row, I'll use an HLOOKUP. So depending on how your table is set out, and I can't determine that, no one can determine that, it's based on what the table exists or the table you intend to build, where that data will be stored that you can look for, and determines which one of those lookup functions you use. But apart from that, everything inside both functions is identical. The only difference between the two is which direction it's looking for that value. So in this case, I'm going to use this example first, and that is going to be equal VLOOKUP, open bracket. So there are some arguments in here. We've got the lookup value, the table array, the column index number, and we've got the range lookup, which is an optional argument. It's in square brackets. And for this example, I'm going to ignore it. I don't need it, but we will explain what it does in a moment. So I'm going to actually follow this same process I did when I did it manually. I want to see if the function conforms to that. So, it helps guide me across correctly. Lookup value. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for that 24. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the cell reference, or click the cell reference where it belongs. End of argument, press comma, now I'm on the table array. This is saying, where is that value? Where am I looking? Well, I'm looking in that red boxed area, which is going to cover the period that I'm going to look vertically down, but I also need to include the range of values that I want to return. So I'm actually going to select from the period downwards and then across to the interest rate. Okay, so that is my table array. It's just where's the table where the period of months and the interest rate is that you want to work with. Comma, column index value. So in the same sense, I looked for 24. I looked in that first column. When I found it, I went across the second column and typed in the interest rate. Same principle. So I'm going to tell it, I want you to go to the second column. So I put in a number 2 on the left here, comma. Now if you remember, I did 3 versions of this. I did the 24, 36, and I did 30, and 30 doesn't exist in that particular table. So what I asked it to do was bring back a nearest match. And luckily, that is the default inside the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUPs, is an approximate match. So because it's the default, I don't even need to satisfy that argument. I could put in a true, but I don't need to because it is the default option. Job done. Press enter. There's the 5.4 that I got for the 24 months. There it is. The most important thing is that that value must be in the first column vertically. If it's anywhere else, VLOOKUP won't work. And in the same respect, the HLOOKUP is the same principle, except is looking at a different orientation for the information. So let's now change that to an HLOOKUP and see what the differences are. So obviously change the function name to HLOOKUP. Lookup value is the same, it's that same one in B2. What's the table array? Well, it's a different range of cells here. So instead of I2 to J8, I want it to look in I13 across, so it's going to look horizontally, HLOOKUP, across those values. And when it's found it, it's going to bring back whatever's in row 2 rather than column 2. I don't need to change the 2 because it's in the same position. Press enter. Does exactly the same job, except this is now working with a slightly different orientation of table. It's more of a cross-tab table rather than an itinerary list table. Because I'm using a nearest match, the periods here and your data you're looking for must be sequential from lowest to highest. So it must be in a sequence from lowest to highest. And that can be a bit of a problem because I might not always want the periods to be sorted numerically or whatever it is that the sequence is made up of. I might want to sort by another column. And once I do that, that VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP no longer works. So bear that in mind, 2 golden rules. The value you're looking for must be in the first column vertically for the VLOOKUP, or the first row horizontally for the HLOOKUP. Now, the VLOOKUP column is used far more commonly when looking up reference numbers, ID numbers, department names, codes, and then bringing back relevant information. So here I've got my exact match sheet, which is appropriately named, because what I want to do is I want to go and look for the exact name, human resources here amongst this list. I don't want it to bring back a nearest department. It's got to be that one or nothing. So I need to teach VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP a little bit more information. But the difference here is, and this is where it becomes more popular but more complicated, is on my first example I only needed one formula. While I'm putting this into a data table like such, I'm going to need that formula to be copied and pasted, and that starts stretching into other realms such as absolute relative addressing, or the dollar thingy as some people call it. And I don't want to start mixing and matching for the example. It gets too complicated. So I can do absolute and relative addressing another time, explain the differences. For now though, I want to make this simple. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, so that I can make this formula work very simply as I copy and paste it down that column there, I'm going to take that range of data there, all that range, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call this one Debt Managers. But I've got 2 tables because again I've got one that shows me looking for the information vertically down that first column. But here's another orientation where I again may be having the data, so I have to look horizontally across the first row and therefore need an HLOOKUP again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of give them both names with a slight variance, and you can create a name for any range of cells, one or many cells, just by selecting the range first, going to the name box here on the left hand side. Ignore the cell reference that's popped up, that's just showing me my active cell. I'm going to click in there and type in the name that I want. So I want in there dept managers, and because I want that name for both tables, I'm going to put in this case a V at the end to show this is the vertical orientation for VLOOKUP. Enter. And then for this one, same again, just going to select that range of cells. I'm going to include the email here as well because I need it, but I don't need all that data in between, which is a bit of a nightmare. But unfortunately, we have to put up with the range being extended beyond to include the data I need. And again, it's going to put in dept managers, but this time H, because my data I'm looking for is horizontally across the first row, so therefore I need the HLOOKUP. Enter. Marvelous. Okay, so now that I've done that, what I'm going to do for this example, I'm going to use the VLOOKUP, which means I need this dept managers V, or because I'm looking vertically down that first column. So just to make sure that that is in there, I'm going to go to the drop down box here, select my dept managers V. Yep, it's highlighted it, and that's exactly what I want. So I'm going to go into my function. It's a bit of a freebie there, name ranges in case you've not done them before. I'm going to go into my manager, and I'm going to sort of do the formula again, VLOOKUP, but the arguments and all the process is pretty much the same. So here I'm going to do a lookup value, which is that cell there, looking for human resources. It's in D2, comma. Where is it? Well, I can select that range, but I gave it a name for a reason, and that's to avoid going through the absolute references in case you're not familiar with them. I'm not going to do that. So what I've done instead is I've given it a name. There it is, dept managers V. It's recognized it. Comma. What do you want to bring back? Well, in this case, I want to bring back the data that's in manager, which is column 1, column 2. So I'm just putting the 2 there. Now, I'm not going to do the range lookup yet. At the moment, by default, it says approximate match. What does that mean? So I'm going to stick to what I did before. So it's telling me that Anne Bartlett is the human resources manager. Yes, she is. Let's drag that down. Deepak Singh is apparently the sales manager. So look, yes, he is. And if I drag this down again, marketing. Apparently Eric Foster is the marketing manager. No, he's not. Olive Patterson is the marketing manager. What's going on there? Let's just drag that down one more. And on this one, I get a #NA. So who's the manager for finance? Well, it's supposed to be Eric Foster, but it's saying NA, which is not available. The value I'm looking for is not there. Why? We know it's there. I can see it. Well, so this is again using an approximate match, and we talked about the fact that with the approximate match, the departments, in this case the key column, has to be sequential, in this case alphabetically listed. As you can see, they're not. So when it does the first one, it worked beautifully. It says there's human resources, I can find it. With the sales one, the way it works is it looks at that first one and says, hey mate, human resources H is earlier in the alphabet than sales, I'll go to the next one. F is earlier in the alphabet than sales, I'll go to the next one. Oh, there it is. That worked. Then when I get to marketing, human resources, H is earlier in the alphabet than M for marketing, we'll go to the next one. F is earlier. Anyway, sales, that's later. And you told me these are sequential. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to bring back the nearest match, which is the lower one. And that's Eric Foster. And the same with this one, finance. It says, well, finance is earlier in the alphabet than H. I haven't got a nearest reference. I couldn't find one. So I'm going to just say it wasn't available. Now I've got two ways to solve this. One is to sort the departments alphabetically. So I can go to the data tab here, click A to Z, and look, they're fixed. There's Olive, there's Eric, fixed. All I've got to do now is just keep the table sorted by the departments forever. Because the moment I go in and sort the data by, I don't know, the manager, it messes up again. So I'll have to reliably keep the table in that structure. I don't want my data always sorted by department. I know that other users are going to want to sort the data, and for other XYZ reasons, I don't want to sort the data. I want to leave it as it is. Ideally, I just wanted to go and say, look, just go through the entire lot. Go through all the departments, and then if you can't find it, say NA, but at least you've gone and looked for the exact match. So to do that, I go back into the formula, and where I've been ignoring that fourth argument, let's get rid of that, close bracket, I put in a comma, and you can see that when I don't specify it, the default is an approximate match. Well, this time I'm going to say, no, I want an exact match. So I'm just going to put in false. You can use 0 instead of false, or 1 instead of true. I like to use the actual Boolean names, false and true, because when you look descriptively at the formula months later, it kind of helps. False will work lovely. Press enter. Now don't forget, Ann and Deepak worked fine, but the marketing and finance ones are the ones that failed, and now they work. So I can now copy that data. Let's do a paste. Formulas only, there we go. With this, I could get really lazy. I can copy the contents of the cell, not the cell itself. I'm not going to do a Control-C on the entire cell. I'm just going to go into the contents of that cell, copy it, press escape, and I'm just going to go and paste the formula inside there. Okay, and that's bringing back the wrong information, but I did that because I'm lazy. I'm going to go and edit that formula. The only thing I need to change is what to return. I want to bring back the email, which is 1, 2, 3, 4th column. So type in a 4, enter, there's the email. Copy that down, let's paste that one to the formulas only. I've now got a complete table. If they change department, so does the data. If the manager changes, so does the data on everywhere where I have a human resources staff member. As we've identified, there are some limitations with these lookup functions. We talked about the key range. It must be the first range in the block of cells that you're looking in. It only looks for the nearest lower match when you do an approximate match. What if I wanted to look at the higher match? The nearest match requires the key column to be sequential, and we also noticed that the array must include all the columns between the key one we're looking for and the value to return. So if there's 6 or 7 columns or rows apart, I have to include those rows and columns as well. Now, myself and many other people have taken to using other alternatives, such as using a combination of index and match to get around some of the limitations that the H and VLOOKUP functions provide. So it's a bit of a nightmare, but of recent, Microsoft provided a new function which is available in Excel 365, and it's called XLOOKUP. So we're going to have a look at that now and see how that works. So I've got another copy of that staff sheet with all the information stored as exactly as before, but this time I'm going to look for, again, the data in this column here. I'm going to look for each value, find it in the department column, and return the manager and the email. And the great thing about it is this XLOOKUP function works with both V and HLOOKUP. It replaces both, because the way that I set the ranges, it doesn't matter how I select them, it will work it out. So I'm going to put in the formula equal XLOOKUP, and again, XLOOKUP is an Excel 365. You'll know if you have access to it or not, because when you type in equal XLOOKUP, if it doesn't appear, you ain't got it. Sorry. But the structure of the arguments is slightly different, but the method, the process in which I was using to look for the data on the earlier stage is the same. So what am I looking for? Lookup value. I'm looking for what's in human resources, D2, comma, where is it? But this time it's only saying where is that value that I'm going to look for. So I can say, well, actually the value I'm looking for is here, and I can just specify the range, whether that's vertically down that column or horizontally across another row. I just specify that range, and it will look amongst that range. And what it does when it looks for them, it indexes them. It's quite clever. so that each value has got a unique number: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so when I go back to my formula and put in a comma, it says where's the return array. So this is the range of cells that says, okay, I'm going to go and bring back this value. So I ask for the manager, and what it does with that array is it does the same thing it did with the department. It's given each one a unique number: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the reason is it will look for that value, human resources. So there it is. That's index 0. So I'm going to return from this one index 0, and it brings back Anne Bartlett. It's really clever. Now, if I continue with the formula, I've got several more optional arguments than I had before. So I'm going to put in a comma. What if it's not been found? So we don't like the hash and a. It's horrible. Could I return something else without it bringing up an error that's going to cause a cascade of issues with other formulas that precede it? So I'm going to go in and say, well, actually, just going to put in there no boss. I could put anything I like. It's just some text. I could put a 0 in there. I could put anything I want. So that would do fine. Comma. Now it's asking, okay, when we look for the return of the index, am I going to look for an exact match? Am I going to look for an exact match or the next smaller item? Well, those are the defaults we had before. So remember, exact match or next smaller item was the default in the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, but I could change it to an exact match. But now I have exact match or next larger item. Never had that before. And I've also got wildcard character match. So I can actually have the string hacks include asterisks and question marks. So if you've ever used wildcard searches, like, look for anything that's S style, which means begin with S, it will then search amongst my data and find the first match that meets that wildcard. But to know that it's using the style as a wildcard character and not as a physical character to search, you have to specify the wildcard character match. In this case, I want the exact match. That's what I had before. So let's put that in there, and each one of them has got a unique number, comma. Now here's another one: perform a search starting at, and I got the search first to last, search last to first. So you're thinking, well, it did that before. Yes, but what this is saying is, if I sort my table by the phone or by the email, I can forcibly say, I don't care what order the department's in, you are going to look for every one of them and search from first to last. So what's a binary search? Have you ever played that guessing game where you have to guess a number between 1 and 100? You don't go, is it 1? And they'll go, no, it's higher than that. Is it 2? No, it's higher than that. Is it 3? You'll be there for a very long time if it's 98. So the way you play the game is you start in the middle. Is it 50? No, it's higher than that. Okay, so it must be between 50 and 100. Is it 75? No, it's lower than that. So you go between and the idea is that you quickly eliminate by sort of doing a search via the index. But the idea is that the numbers would have to be listed from 1 to 100. And then you can then just chop in half between them to find. And the idea is that it will just search much, much quicker when it knows the sequential block of data is in an incremental value. So that's what the binary search does. It kind of it relies on your data. The lookup column has to be in either ascending or descending order for this to work, so that it can then do that chopping in half and quickly find the value. So the binary search is quite useful for larger volumes of tables of data to look up. Search them and first to last. Marvelous. Close the brackets, press enter, and Bartlett. If I sort by any other thing, that works. Brilliant. So the XLOOKUP is the H and VLOOKUPs combined. They cater for all the issues they had in terms of being able to rely on you having the data in a certain position, certain sort of sorting order. The XLOOKUP now takes care of that and does it all for you behind the scenes. Fantastic. Right, was that good for you? VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP and the newer XLOOKUP all covered in this video. So I hope that helped understand how it works. I hope that you got something new out of that. If you have any questions, if there's any functions you'd like me to cover, you can contact me in the description below in YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. These are the social media best ways of connecting to me and asking questions. Please click like, subscribe. I want to do a lot more with the videos, and I've got a new project launching very soon, so I'd like to hopefully get you to benefit from that as well. So stay safe, have fun.